One other story before we go to the callers. There was an important ruling. This happened, I guess, actually on the 28th, a couple of days ago. And again, the implications of elections are, go much further, I think, than we anticipate. And some of the most important dynamics that implicate policy and affect the real lives of people happen at a surface that is, below the surface in a way that we can't see. And this is this story sort of like combines a couple of things that I don't think people think about enough. So in 2015, the National Labor Relations Board, which had a majority of democratically appointed commissioners because Barack Obama was the president, and they have 5-year terms, and unions have a lot more sway over a Democratic president, even if he never put his walking shoes on and walked with them in Wisconsin, which was a huge disappointment. But unions have much more sway over a Democratic president than they do over a Republican president. And so those commissioners were very pro-labor. And in a pretty dramatic ruling in 2015, the NLRB ruled that companies and franchisors with both indirect and direct control of employees could be held liable for labor violations committed by contractors or franchisees. So what does that mean? It means that the McDonald's in Canton, Ohio, owned by Brendan, can be held that not only can Brendan be held liable for punishing people who go out on strike or for wage theft, but McDonald's headquarters can too, because McDonald's has enough control over what that franchisee does. Even though he's the owner, they set the prices, they set a lot of the standards. They have enough control that they are considered joint employers. This particular case was centered on a business called Browning Ferris in California, which is a recycling company. And they contract with another company to provide workers to sort and clean the recycled products. So in 2013, a union petitioned the National Labor Relations Board to represent these contractor workers, not Browning Ferris, but the other company, Lead Point. But also Browning Ferris was named as a joint employer. So this is what these companies do. They hire basically temp agencies so that they don't have the responsibility, the labor responsibility for these people. And the National Labor Relations Board said, no, you can't get away with that. The Trump administration and is obviously against that ruling, has tried to reverse it, can't on its own. They were taken to court. Well, the D.C. Circuit Court, a panel of 3 judges, just ruled 2-1 in favor of the National Labor Relations Board's ability and responsibility to hold employers in that situation as jointly liable for labor violations, et cetera, et cetera. And there's 2 things you should know about this. One is the Trump National Labor Relations Board cannot reverse this. In fact, they have a responsibility, a statutory responsibility to rule in this way. And so there is legal leverage anytime they don't going forward. But 2, the judges, the 2-1 decision in this panel of judges were appointed by Obama. The reason why they were able to appoint these judges, and if it goes to the entire en banc, as they say, of the D.C. Circuit Court. The reason why they will lose there, too, is because Harry Reid got rid of the filibuster when Republicans were refusing to seat more judges on that court. It was 4-4. They wouldn't seat the other 3 judges. It's supposed to have 11 members. They said, that's 8 is plenty. This is the most important court, and we've talked about this court a lot. This is one of the most important courts after this is the most important court in the country after the Supreme Court. And in some ways, it's more important because it deals with a lot more cases. And the reason why this is going to stand for labor is because a Democrat with whom I had many, many policy disagreements was there. So in that Canton, Ohio McDonald's, they're going to be subject to wage increases, or they're not going to be able to punish their workers for going out on strike, like Fight for 15. There's going to be a lot of justice for workers because of this. Now, it's possible it could go to the Supreme Court, and we now have a Republican-controlled Supreme Court. It's conceivable they'll overturn it, but I imagine if that happens, it won't happen for a couple of years. And who knows? But these are the implications of all of these things that happened years ago that will have implications going years forward. And it's important to be aware of, much of the governing that happens on this level. And, unless you read the National Law Review, you're not going to see it. Or I guess The Intercept also reported on it. Rachel Cohen did.